They mocked her wheelchair. She silenced the school bully with a single devastating move. They laughed at her wheelchair, mocking her noodle arms and calling her traffic cone with Wi-Fi. They thought she was weak, barely human. But in one heartbeat, the world tilted. His wrist snapped, his balance shattered, and she remained seated, silent, unshaken, watching him crash to the floor. What happened next would shatter every assumption about power. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's the moment a bullied girl rewrote the rules of strength without ever standing up. Are you ready to witness how she harnessed the hidden fire inside her? If you've ever been dismissed, underestimated, or trapped by other people's expectations, hit subscribe now and join me on this journey from silence to unstoppable power. Smash that like button if you believe justice isn't about brute force, but heart and strategy. Drop a comment with one word, unbreakable, if you're ready to see how a bullied girl rewrote the rules of strength without ever standing up. I was 8, the first time Grandpa Marcus taught me how to breathe like water, slow, steady, unshakable, while the world around us raced past. Now I'm 14, rolling into Wilson Heights Middle School each morning, under a sky that never seems quite big enough to contain the doubts I carry. My name is Maya Thompson. I use a wheelchair because of cerebral palsy. Every day, I navigate crowded hallways built for bodies that never stall, for legs that never tremble. This campus sits in suburban Atlanta, where Spanish moss drips off old oaks and the colors of skin blend in the classrooms, white, brown, black, Asian, yet somehow I feel more alone than ever. Teachers speak to me in hushed, careful tones, as if my voice might shatter like glass. Strangers offer help before I even ask, their eyes full of pity. And the three at the top of the social food chain, Dylan Hayes, M. Carter, Jackson Lee, make cruelty look like sport. Picture the moment I wheeled through those double doors on my first day, the hush that falls when people aren't sure whether to stare or pretend not to stare. That's the sound of eyes whispering, "She doesn't belong." My backpack straps dug into my shoulders as Mom squeezed my hand and said, "Just be yourself, baby girl. Don't let them shrink you." But being myself felt like standing still in a storm. By lunchtime, I'd already memorized every ramp and every door that stuck when they slammed. I learned which bathroom stalls had broken locks and where the soap dispenser spat insults instead of foam. I found a corner in the library and lost myself in graphic novels, where heroes sprinted across rooftops. Heroes who stood tall, not rolled. I wanted to sprint. Instead, I listened to laughter echo down the hall when M. Carter announced, "Look, it's Maya, our resident mime act." But beneath my blank stare, there was a quiet fury. A memory of Grandpa Marcus in his faded gym shorts teaching me an inside sweep, guiding my wrist so gently it felt like water flowing around rock. He never called it training. To him, it was play. But it was more discipline woven into every breath I took. And Tony the custodian, who taught Grandpa back in his college wrestling days, once joked that Marcus could teach a tree to fight. I stored that image in my mind, roots planted deep, branches unbreakable. Meanwhile, everywhere I turned, the world insisted my wheels defined me, that my body was a statement of limitation. Yet, I held on to one certainty: if they laughed because they didn't see my strength, then one day they'd feel it in slow motion. I just had to remember how to let the silence sharpen into focus, how to channel every whispered insult into the rhythm of my heartbeat, how to let the weight of their cruelty become the fuel for my fire. This is the story of how a girl in a wheelchair learned she didn't need to stand out, how she transformed every stolen glance and every mocking joke into the undercurrent of her power. Because sometimes the fiercest revolutions begin in the quietest corners, and mine was just getting started. Every morning, Dylan Hayes and his crew lined up at the cafeteria entrance like prize fighters, circling a ring, sizing me up before breakfast. I could hear Dylan's voice, deep and mocking, cut through the clatter. "Hey Maya, is it true your wheels have Wi-Fi built in?" A ripple of laughter followed, as predictable as the sunrise. I felt the blood in my ears, hot and insistent. my palms slick against the rims of my chair. But I held my face, still practiced the emptiness that kept them from ever seeing how much it hurt. At my locker, M. Carter swaggered up with Jackson Lee trailing behind, like an eager pet. She flicked her phone camera toward me, bright flash between us. Smile for the Graham wheelchair warrior, she cooed. The hush that followed was worse than a shout. Every head turned. I heard the click-click of notifications, the slow swish of my combination lock 32187, turning like a countdown to humiliation. My heart thudded in triple time. God, I hated the taste of fear. By third period, my English book weighed 1,000 pounds as I slid it off the shelf. Jackson leaned over my shoulder, whispering loud enough for the whole hallway. Bet she's memorized every word, needs the practice. I packed up faster, the echo of his words trailing like a tail. I tried to vanish into my own thoughts. Grandpa Marcus's gravelly voice. Breathe like water. I sucked in air, let it fill me slow and deep, but water couldn't drown this stinging flush in my cheeks. Lunchtime was worse. The cafeteria smelled of burnt pizza and spilled milk, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. I wheeled to my usual corner, earphones clamped tight, hoping the hum of music would mute the world. For 10 minutes, it worked. Then Dylan's voice crashed back via, "Is it true? Your mom pays someone to shove you around all day?" Embarrassment slammed into me like a fist. I froze as M plucked my sandwich off the tray and tossed it to the floor. It landed with a pathetic flop. I sank as dozens of eyes slid toward me, pity, curiosity, barely concealed disgust. I never cried. Instead, I packed up and left headset trailing each push, a protest. Every corridor became a gauntlet. The water fountains were too high, the door handles twisted the wrong way. One day, a teacher slowed her step beside me. "Do you need a counselor?" Maya. Her voice was gentle pity, lacing every syllable. I forced a small nod. Counseling. Like I was broken. Later, I raged at my reflection in the library window. I am not broken. My voice bounced back at me, weak tinny. I swallowed it down, let the rage simmer. That night, I found myself back in the garage, stubbing my toe on Grandpa's old punching bag. It was dusty, the initials MT faded on the leather. I slipped on my worn gloves, not to fight anyone else, but to fight the shame in my own bones. My first jab was clumsy, the bag barely budged. Then I remembered how he guided my wrist, how he corrected my stance until I felt anchored, immovable. I struck again, faster, harder, and suddenly the bag rocked. My breath matched the rhythm, inhale, shift, wait, strike, pivot, exhale. The world outside that garage shrank to the space between me and the bag. For the first time, I felt something else, purpose. At school the next day, the tension was electric. I caught Dylan's eye in the hallway. His smirk faltered for a split second. He recovered, but I noticed. In math class, as the teacher droned on, I felt the weight of dozens of stares. M tapped Jackson on the arm, nodding toward me. I closed my eyes, breathed like water, and let it wash over me. No more flinching, no more shrinking. By fourth period, whispers chased me down the hall. She's weird. I heard she kicked someone's butt. I kept moving heart sharp. I knew they were building my legend before the final blow. Dylan cornered me by the lockers as I dialed my combo 32187 like a mantra. His shoulder dinged mine deliberate. "You gonna melt down today, Maya? Or do your wheels finally run out of battery?" He laughed. I wanted to scream. Instead, I placed my hand on the lock, pushed in the final number, and without looking up, whispered to myself, "Not today." When I wheeled into the gym, the air was heavy with expectation. The echo of sneakers on polished floors, the clang of weights, the fluorescent glare that spotlighted every move. Coach Daniels blew his whistle, called for warm-ups. I rolled to the side, stretching my shoulders, feeling the room tilt toward me. Dylan sauntered over Jackson at his elbow, M hovering just behind. They formed a semicircle, predators closing in. The first misstep came when Jackson bumped my chair, almost tipping me. Everyone gasped. I heard my breath catch, remembered Grandpa's voice. "Center yourself." I locked my wheels, dropped my grip, let them drive into me, then pivoted. My hands shot out, gripping Jackson's wrist with a calm I barely understood. Time slowed. I guided his momentum in a smooth arc, and he stumbled forward, arms windmilling, before hitting the mat with a hollow thud. A ripple of shock went through the gym. Dylan's jaw dropped. M's phone clattered to the floor. Jackson curled in a ball, eyes wide as dinner plates. Silence stretched. Then a few kids laughed, nervous, unsure, while others murmured approval. Coach Daniels jogged over eyes darting between me and Jackson. "Step away," he said calmly. Voice steady. "That's enough." He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't say I should apologize. He simply recognized that this was self-defense, not aggression. Dylan's face flushed crimson as he dragged himself up, brushing off loose threads of dignity. Em picked up her phone, but she didn't record. Instead, she covered her mouth, expression unreadable. All at once, I realized they weren't looking at my chair. They were looking at me. Not the body they thought they knew, but the person who refused to be small. My heart hammered, not from fear, but from something else. Liberation. Triumph. As I wheeled out of the gym, the air felt different, charged with possibility. Every push of my wheels was a statement I belong. I matter. And the echoes of my strike would ripple far beyond these walls. They say power shouts, but sometimes it whispers through the silence of a heartbeat, through the rotation of a wheel, and through the calm certainty that comes when you finally stop being afraid. And right now, I am anything but afraid. In the days after the gym incident, I felt a shift under my skin, like a storm gathering before it breaks. Every glance down a hallway seemed charged, every push of my wheels a declaration. I knew the moment was coming when I'd have to turn that surge of adrenaline into something more than instinctual defense. I needed a plan, a way to use their expectations against them. It started in the garage, under the dim glow of a single bare bulb, the old punching bag swaying gently from a rusty chain. I traced my fingertips over the faded initials. M.T. Marcus had stamped them there years ago, an imprint of belief. I remembered the look in his eyes when he said, "Strength is knowing when not to strike." That line echoed in my mind as I tied my gloves, each knot tightening my resolve. First, I mapped the terrain. I wheeled through every corridor after school, noting exit routes, camera placements, even the few lockers that didn't squeak when slammed. I watched Dylan and his crew rehearse their dominance, how Dylan crowd controlled in the cafeteria, how Em stationed herself by the vending machine to film how Jackson loitered by the restroom to intercept whispers. They believed they owned these spaces. I decided I would use their confidence against them. Next, I built my toolkit. Beyond the physical moves, the inside sweep, the wrist lock, the pivot I deployed, I needed psychological hooks. I tested a feint on the bag, a half hook that looked like a strike, but ended in a redirect. I practiced slow pivots that seemed to stall, lulling the opponent into overcommitment. Grandpa Marcus's voice guided me. "Let them land in your current, then guide them where you want." Each night, sweat dripped onto cracked concrete as I visualized how those motions would translate to a school hallway, a gym mat, a cafeteria floor. But strategy without allies is brittle. I reached out to Lucas Ramirez, who'd quietly defended me when Jackson tried to steal my books. I described my plan not to harm, but to expose, to create a moment so undeniable that even their cameras couldn't twist it. Lucas agreed to cloak my preparation in normal routine, tutoring sessions in the library. Extra study hall, credits anything to keep my true focus hidden. With his help, I stashed fresh gloves in my locker and marked a spot in the gym where the floor mat had just enough give to absorb weight without skidding. Then came the psychological setup. I let word leak through a locked Zoom chat with Lucas that I was going to do something big during PE. A few curious glances darted my way. Dylan's lips curled into a mocking grin when he heard rumors. Perfect. I needed his arrogance to swell to blind him. I needed M's camera at the ready, Jackson poised to help Jeff him into my trap. I imagined the cafeteria, them jeering me, taking the bait, setting the stage. The night before the plan, I barely slept. I sat in the garage, arms wrapped around my knees, staring at the bag. My heartbeat was a drum roll. Doubts flickered. What if I miscalculated? What if they turned it into something more violent? But as dawn crept in, I remembered Grandpa's final lesson. Violence isn't the point, control is. I inhaled and exhaled until the tightness in my chest loosened. I wasn't planning revenge, I was orchestrating accountability. Morning came like a silent promise. I wheeled into the gym early, laying out my gloves, stretching in the corner where Lucas had sprayed a faint line of chalk. It would mark the spot I needed. As the room filled, I felt the weight of every eye, the hum of fluorescent lights, like a spotlight. Dylan swaggered in scanning until he saw me, his smirk already forming. Jackson and Em flanked him, habitual roles in his theater of cruelty. Coach Daniels blew the whistle for warm-ups. Everyone formed circles. I stood beside Dylan, too close to ignore. Jackson elbowed me. I resisted the urge to flinch, let the contact register in my shoulder. Em pulled out her phone with a showman's flourish. "This is gonna be good," she whispered loud enough for Dylan's earshot. Dylan leaned in. "Let's see if you've got any fuel left in those wheels." That was my cue. I rolled back, feigning imbalance. Their laughter popped like balloons. Jackson reached to steady me just as I'd predicted. I locked my wheels, pivoted my hips, and guided his own momentum forward. Camera flashes crackled. Em's filming. Dylan's laughter died mid-sentence. He lurched toward me, hands raised, confident, complacent. Exactly what I needed. I centered my grip on his wrist, the classroom-esque torque, memorized from 100 drills. His posture bent. I guided him through the arc I'd practiced. There was a collective inhale as Dylan's feet left the mat. Time elongated the scuff of his sneaker on vinyl, the soft thud as he landed the sharp intake of air from the spectators. In that silence, I didn't taste victory, I tasted relief. They'd seen my strength on my terms. As Dylan lay blinking dust motes dancing in the fluorescent glare, I wheeled back to my chalk line. Lucas stepped forward, clapped once, a signal I'd rehearsed, to confirm nobody would claim I acted impulsively. Coach Daniels, the first to break the hush, nodded at me and shook his head as if in disbelief. Em lowered her phone eyes wide. Jackson rubbed his wrist, stunned. In that moment, the plan's final component clicked into place, allowing them to be the architects of their own undoing. Their jeers and cameras had built a stage. I'd merely directed the final act. The ripple spread beyond the gym, through whispers in the cafeteria, through late-night texts, through the principal's announcement about respect and power. And as I packed my gloves away, I felt every lesson converge: observation, preparation, discipline, and control. Dylan's downfall wasn't just a reversal of force, it was proof that strength can be seated. Silence can be weaponized, and a single pivot can rewrite a story. The real plan had succeeded not to punish, but to reclaim my narrative, and to remind everyone that underestimation is the deadliest blind spot of all. The moment the whistle blew, every eye in the gym snapped to me like I was prey in the spotlight. Dylan planted his feet shoulder-width apart, chest out, confidence radiating, as he waited for his prey to make the first move. Em Carter raised her phone, its red recording light pulsing like a heartbeat. Someone was always ready to catch my next mistake. Jackson Lee hovered at Dylan's side, his expression bored, until I rolled into position, and then he straightened, sensing the stakes. I inhaled, letting the tension pool in my lungs. The fluorescent lights above felt like searchlights. The smell of rubber mats and sweat clung to the air, thick enough to touch. My gloves were snug around my wrists, Marcus's initials pressed into the leather, a silent vow of every lesson he'd taught me. I remembered his words, "Let them make the first move. When they commit, guide them where you want." Dylan shifted forward, sneering, "Ready to see what your wheels can do." His words hung in the charged silence. I let my wheels drift back half a foot, just enough. I watched his pupils widen. He was counting on my flinch. Instead, I anchored my wheels, gripped the chair's frame, and dropped my center of gravity. My voice was calm, but carried through the gym. Come on, Dylan. Show me. He lunged a half-hearted jab meant to intimidate. I anticipated it, pivoting my shoulders, the motion fluid. Instead of dodging, I leaned into the strike, catching his wrist. He yanked back in surprise. No one expected me to meet force with a counter. I guided his momentum downward, twisting my gloves into his grip, and felt the power shift under my fingertips. His arm snapped forward. He stumbled eyes wide as gravity pulled him off balance. The gym's clamor turned to a collective gasp. The first strike was a feint, a test. Next, I unleashed the inside sweep Grandpa Marcus had drilled into me thousands of times. My right hand gripped Dylan's forearm, my left anchored on his elbow. I rotated my torso, pivoted on my wheels, and heaved. His center collapsed. Time stretched as he toppled backward, back hitting the mat with a dull oomph. The echo of impact rolled through the room like distant thunder. A single bead of sweat slid down my temple, tracing a path through the chalk dust and grime. In that suspended second, I tasted something new control. This wasn't a desperate flail. It was choreography, the culmination of every calculated move I'd practiced in the garage. I let Dylan lie there, muscles twitching, as I drew in a slow breath and let it out. The aftermath crashed around me, Shout's phone slapping on the floor, M's camera clattering to her side as she fumbled to keep filming. Jackson's jaw twitched before he stepped back, hands raised in surrender. He weren't coming any closer. I turned my gaze toward him, let my eyes slide over his form, and offered a nod, an acknowledgement that I had the upper hand. He knew it. The murmurs rose. She's not just defending, she's dominating. I've never seen anyone move like that. The words washed over me, but I kept my focus inward, listening to the echo of Marcus's voice. Strength flows through stillness, not noise. Without a word, I wheeled to my chalk line, my anchor in this staged battleground. Lucas clapped once a quiet signal amid the clamor. Coach Daniels blew his whistle, sharply slicing through the chaos. His gaze was steady respect, replacing skepticism. "That's enough," he said. "Step away." He didn't demand an apology. He recognized what I'd done, pure disciplined defense, elevated by strategy. Dylan scrambled up, face red, panting. He rubbed his forearm as if to erase the imprint of my grip. Blood pounded in my ears, but not from fear, from a fierce elation that sang through my veins. They'd constructed this spectacle to mock me, to reduce me to a meme. Instead, I'd rewritten the script. Their own arrogance had paved the way. The room held its breath as Dylan straightened, chest heaving. He glared at me, defiance warring with shame. Em recovered her phone and pressed record again, but this time the angle was different. Instead of me from above, she captured Dylan's humiliation. The slack in Jackson's shoulders, the coach's grave nod. The lens had flipped. I felt a tremor beneath my wheels, the shift from isolation to recognition. Their laughter had fallen silent, replaced by something else. Glee shock, maybe respect. I wheeled toward them, the chair's hum, the only sound I claimed as mine. Dylan met my gaze, and for the first time he spoke without the veneer of mockery out. His whisper was a confession. I paused at the center of the mat. The gym lights cast long shadows, turning every speck of chalk dust into stars suspended midair. I held my gloves at my sides, chest rising steadily. "You forgot," I said softly, "that power isn't measured in height." My voice boomed in my own ears. "It's measured in conviction." Heads turned, phones raised. In that second, I realized this moment wasn't just mine. It belonged to every person who'd ever been pushed aside, every body labeled broken, every soul told to shrink. My strike was more than a demonstration of skill. It was a declaration of existence. And now they had to reckon with it. Coach Daniels stepped forward, gathering both Dylan and me into his stern gaze. He said, "I want a rematch one-on-one. No cameras, no sideshows. You earned that much." His words landed like a challenge, but a fair one. Dylan glared, but nodded. I swallowed a grin, feeling the surge of anticipation for the next act. As I wheeled off the mat chest, heaving sweat dripping onto the vinyl floor, a strange calm settled over me. The echoes of my victory still rattled the walls, but in my mind I replayed each movement with clarity. The arc of the wrist lock, the pivot of my hips, the satisfying thud of impact. Each detail was a testament to preparation and sacrifice. Em caught up phone in hand, but this time she didn't circle for angles. She walked beside me. Her words were low and guarded. That was incredible. Jackson trailed behind, silent but respectful. Even Dylan's stride approached mine, hesitant, as if he wanted to reclaim some shred of dignity by walking alongside. I didn't slow down. I let them close in, allowed their proximity to underscore my victory. By the time I reached the gym exit, a trail of hushed conversations followed my wheels. The dynamic had shifted irrevocably. I was no longer the girl they underestimated. I was the one who set the terms. And as the double doors swung open to let me roll into the hallway, washed in midday light, I glanced back, meeting each pair of eyes that dared to look. The hallways that once felt like gauntlets now buzzed with new energy. Whispers trailed after me. "Did you see that? She took him down without standing. What's she going to do next?" I didn't give them answers. I only offered the same calm conviction I'd carried into that first strike. Because the real aftermath wasn't measured in stunned faces or viral clips. It was measured in the quiet revolution that starts when power is claimed on your own terms, and the world has no choice but to watch it unfold. The gym fell silent for a heartbeat longer than any of us expected. Then the murmurs began, surprised, awed, a few nervous laughs that sounded more like confessions. "Did you see that move? She didn't even stand up." Stand. I stayed poised in my chair, letting my breath settle as Dylan pressed himself against the lockers, red-faced and rubbing his elbow. M. Carter lowered her phone and stared at her screen like it had betrayed her. Jackson Lee hovered beside Dylan, mouth agape, as if searching for the right words to explain what just happened. Within minutes, news of the wheelchair reversal spread faster than wildfire. In the cafeteria, students crowded around tables, replaying the clip on every phone screen. Some whispered that Maya Thompson was a one-girl army. Others muttered that they'd never look at disability the same way again. I noticed familiar faces, kids who'd never said more than hello, now offering tentative smiles, nods of respect. Even the bullies who'd tormented me walked a little more carefully, as though aware of new stakes. Coach Daniels called me aside. Afterward, his usual stern expression softened. "That was textbook execution," he said quietly, tapping his whistle. "Discipline control, no unnecessary force. You showed them what real strength looks like." His praise felt like a medal pinned to my chest, but more meaningful than any award. It meant someone saw me beyond the wheels. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed nonstop. 3 texts from Casey in art class: "You are insane." 2 from Tara on the basketball team: "Teach me how to do that." And a group thread pinging: "Maya Thompson, please respond." I scrolled through the messages, warmth creeping into my chest. For the first time, I didn't delete the notifications. I let them build a chorus of whistles and cheers, replacing the static of mockery. That evening, the principal's announcement came over the intercom during 4th period. Today, we witnessed extraordinary courage and restraint. Maya Thompson reminded us all that power doesn't require standing, it requires conviction. Please join me in celebrating her actions as an example of respect and self-control. The applause echoed down the hallways, surprising even the teachers. I looked at the faces around me, genuine smiles, clapping hands, a few tears. My own eyes stung not from pain, but from relief. Finally, the walls of indifference cracked. Over the next week, the school environment transformed. Lessons on inclusion and adaptive sports were added to gym class. The student council invited me to co-host a Strength Beyond Limits workshop, teaching basic self-defense techniques that honored everyone's abilities. Lucas Ramirez stood by my side, handing out gloves and guiding newbies through pivots and grips. Even Jackson signed up, hesitant but determined to learn. Dylan watched from the sidelines, his posture less rigid, his smirk replaced by a thoughtful nod. Outside the school, the local news ran a short segment, "Middle Schooler Redefined Strength," with footage of my strike and interviews with Coach Daniels, my mom, and a few classmates. I heard my own voice in the background. I just wanted them to see me, not pity me. The anchor's tone was respectful, tinged with amazement. It wasn't viral mockery anymore. It was celebration. At home that night, I rolled into the garage and stared at Grandpa Marcus's old punching bag. The initials MT shone under the single bulb. In the quiet, I ran my hands over the leather, feeling every scar and stitch. I remembered his final words. Teach someone else. That's how we stay alive. I reached into my locker and pulled out the worn letter he'd left me. Reading it again, I let his words sink in. You are not broken. You are more. On Monday, the hallway felt different under my wheels. Strangers smiled. Teachers greeted me by name. A sixth grader caught up to me at the water fountain, pale, curious, clutching a notebook. Are you Maya from the news? He asked shyly. I nodded. He held out a sketch he'd drawn of me with a glowing aura. You inspired me, he whispered. My chest swelled as I laughed softly, taking the drawing and giving him a fist bump. In that moment, I realized the true result of what happened wasn't just a viral clip or a changed schedule, it was a shift in belief. My classmates no longer saw just a girl in a wheelchair. They saw potential resilience, a living testament to the idea that limitations exist only where you accept them. The system adapted, yes, adding ramps and workshops, but more importantly, hearts and minds opened. As I wheeled away toward my next class, I felt the undercurrent of a revolution, a ripple that started with a pivot and a whisper of power. The world around me may never be perfect, but it had already begun to change because I chose to stand even while seated. And, in that choice, the real victory took root, promising that anyone who feels unseen can rise quietly, firmly, and with unshakable resolve. Power isn't a matter of height or muscle, it's the quiet conviction that refuses to be small. Maya's story reminds us that every insult thrown, every sideways glance meant to shrink, you can become the fuel that forges your strength. When you feel unseen or underestimated, remember that your power lies not in proving others wrong, but in affirming your own worth. Think of the hall she traversed, spaces built for bodies that move differently, now reclaimed as her arena. Her pivot wasn't just a martial arts move. It was a shift in perspective from victim to architect of her destiny. What if you treated every barrier you face as a training ground? Each locked door, each harsh word, each dismissive nod as a moment to learn patient strategy and resolve Maya's victory wasn't a shout. It was a measured redirection of force, a lesson in control. In life, real triumph often whispers, it's the calm breath before action, the steady hand that guides adversity where you choose. Ask yourself, when the world pushes, how will you pivot? Where will you channel the energy meant to break you? There's also a collective responsibility here. When M's camera flipped from mocking to recording Maya's triumph, it symbolized choice. Our choice to amplify cruelty or to spotlight courage. What role will you play when you witness injustice? Will you laugh along, look away, or become an ally who changes the narrative? And finally, Maya learned that true empowerment extends beyond the self. By teaching others the moves she inherited from her grandfather, she multiplied her impact. She didn't hoard her strength, she shared it. The next time you discover a gift, a lesson born of struggle or heritage, consider passing it on. In teaching someone else, you ensure the flame you light continues to burn long after your own fight is done. So carry this forward, redefine power on your own terms. Trust the stillness within your storm. And remember that sometimes the fiercest revolutions begin not with a roar, but with a silent, unshakable choice to stand no matter how you're positioned. Remember, this strength isn't measured by how high you stand, but by how firmly you hold your ground no matter the obstacles. Maya Thompson turned every sneer and every locked door into the fuel for her power. She showed us that true victory lives in the silence between doubt and action, in the precision of a pivot, and in the courage to reclaim your story on your own terms. If you've ever been told you don't belong, let Maya's journey remind you that your worth is non-negotiable. Turn the whispers into your battle hymn. Use every insult as a stepping stone. And when you feel the world closing in, breathe like water steadily, unshakably, and guide your own current. Now it's your turn. Hit subscribe and join this community of unbreakable spirits who refuse to be defined by others. Share this video with someone who needs to hear they're more than their circumstances. Drop a comment below with one word that defines your strength. Unstoppable, resilient. Unbreakable, and let's build a movement that roars in silence. Your revolution starts now. Keep pushing, keep pivoting, and never let anyone steal your power.